Now then, I rigged up an interesting little device here. Let's see what happens when we try to connect these two together, huh? No, I don't think so, somehow.
Sure you're getting it right?
Yes, well, it's just a question of...
Pull to open. Pull to open. Yes, and what do you do?
No information yet available.
I'm a genius.
But that's no excuse for this kind of slip-up.
I'm sorry, but I've got no alternative.
Here come the drums!
Hello and welcome to Pull to Open, an ongoing quest to watch all of Doctor Who, the entire television program in random order. I'm Pete Paschal.
And I'm Chris Taylor of Death, and we have a very special of Death edition for you here this week of Pull to Open, because Pete, do you know how many stories we've done?
Is it 100 stories?
That's right. Cue the confetti, cue the champagne. We have done 100 stories in the history of Doctor Who.
Well, hold on, Chris. Let me stop you there. We are about to do 100 stories is probably more accurate.
Yeah,
By the time people are listening to our voices, we will have done 100 stories. But for you,
we're coming to you from the past.
Moment.
Yes,
that's right.
We're broadcasting to you live from between stories 99 and 100, and we're about to reveal the 100th story, as if you hadn't guessed by when you clicked on this thing. Or maybe it's just autoplaying. Who even knows? Anyway, Pete, do you want to catch the fine folks up on where we've been most recently?
Previously on Pull to Open. So, in the recent past, we have been locked into the classic series. 3 stories ago, we were in the Tom Baker era, visiting one of the most interesting looking episodes of that time in the adventure known only as Meglos.
That's right. Meglos Mayhem with Mark Cochran.
Yep, and also kind of known only as the time Tom Baker was covered with cactus acne. Good times there.
2 Tom Bakers, the price of 1. Gotta love Meglos.
Then we kept rewinding for a bit, because right from Meglos, we were taken to the Ambassadors of Death.
Yes, interesting that, isn't it? The Doctor becomes an astronaut in a of-death story that probably went on way too long. With 7 episodes there.
Featuring something taking off from Mars.
Indeed.
Which did become relevant in a minute, everyone.
That's right. The chances of anything coming from Mars are 2 million to 1.
But we went back in time yet again, far back in time in the series and far back in time in the real world, which of course took us to the William Hartnell era in The Mythmakers, an entirely lost episode. We got to get creative to watch, or experience, rather.
That's right. We were your source for the Trojan Horse, and wow, that seems so long ago now, Pete. Because we went on a side quest.
We did
last week to look at all of the cold opens in Doctor Who, and that's kind of feels like we've had 100 sorbet courses.
Right. Yeah.
We've done all of New Who. It feels like, or at least little bits of it.
After some tasty classic meals, we had like a huge 100-course meal of New Who.
100 courses of amuse-bouches. Bouche was so damn amused by the end. I feel like that was a cautionary tale Pull to Open that we should have just watched the story that we were sent to instead. And Pete, where were we sent to? Where did the randomizer take us to from the Trojan Horse?
Well, giving us kind of a bingo on the first 4 Doctors for the last 4 stories, it took us to Patrick Troughton's 5th serial of his 3rd season, season 6, The Seeds of Death.
Wow, yes. And just like the Ambassadors of Death, I did not know going into this, because I hadn't seen either of them, where did the Seeds come in? Where did the Ambassadors come in? They're both titles. Where's the of Death? Who is playing of Death? Well, there are many of Deaths here, but we'll get into that. Wow, what an interesting pairing. And so Randomizer to take us there in reverse order in the of death stories that go to the moon.
Yeah, you might say it was a killer choice. Anyway, before we get too deep, folks, into all of the things we want to talk to you about, we want to let you know if you are only here for the commentary on the Seeds of Death, just go ahead, look in the show notes. There will be the time code of when we start our commentary on that story. It'll be very prominent. If you're on YouTube, just scroll down a bit. It's in the notes under the video. And if you want to cut right ahead to that, you can go ahead and do it. But you don't want to do that, trust me, especially this week, because we have a lot of news. We have a lot to talk about. Well, not only do we have a Whomoji challenge, a brand new one, we have our poll to open feature on what you guys thought of the Ambassadors of Death. And there was some surprising results, let me tell you. But for our 100th story, guys, the 100th story of Doctor Who that we're talking about on this here podcast, we have an extra special poll to open pulse loop.
Of course, fetch a demon.
Guys, we're here. And when I say here, I mean the internet. And
everywhere.
When I say the internet, it means pull to open. You know it as a podcast. You might know it as a TikTok channel. You might know it as a Twitter feed occasionally. And a bunch of the other places that we're at. We're also on YouTube, all the things. We're going to talk about those, of course. But where we are now is also the World Wide Web. And we are at pulltoopen.net for all of your pull to open content needs. Yes, go ahead and go there. We've got a website. It's awesome. And it is hosted, of course, on Substack, as you'll see once you type that in. And what does Substack give you? What are they known for? Yes, that's right. It's a newsletter platform, which means if you go visit us on pulltoopen.net, that's where we are. You can subscribe to the podcast in newsletter form. It'll be sent to your inbox every week. You won't need to just fire open your podcast app or whatever. You're also going to get a newsletter form. But also by subscribing to the newsletter, guys, you are going to get our written notes on the episode that we work from. And we have never released these. And we're a little nervous about it, to be honest with you. There's probably going to be slight editing from the raw stuff, but you're going to get a lot of behind-the-scenes thoughts because sometimes we don't get to everything we want to say.
Yes, that's right.
Some fresh thoughts. There's going to be bits about what the story's notable for. You'll get the Whomoji challenge answer key.
Oh boy, I won't be looking at that one. But also, the name you choose is a promise. And a pull to open, we promised here last week that we would share our spreadsheet of the top cold open of all of our ratings for all of the cold opens, and we can now do that on pulltoopen.net. So go along, like, subscribe. Well, you can't really like on Substack, can you? But just subscribe.
Oh, you can like it.
Like.
You can repost things. You can do all the things.
Smash that Substack button.
Yeah, smash all the buttons. So yeah, at the start, guys, we're going to be sending you guys notes if you subscribe. We're actually really looking to offer more than just what we serve up every week. We're with life, balancing life and work and everything else. We'll figure something out, but there might even just be random musings about Doctor Who now that it's coming back, and we're probably going to have more thoughts on it in the coming
That's right.
week.
Yeah, we did. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that is coming up, and certainly if you believe Russell T Davies' letter in the latest Doctor Who magazine, there's a bunch of stuff that he hasn't revealed. British listeners will be celebrating right now because they are going to get all of Doctor Who, all of it on iPlayer. It has been, divided between the services in the UK. Now it's all for you, free on iPlayer, you lucky dogs. Here in the US, we still have to use BritBox and Max, but that may be changing coming up. As a lot of things are changing, a lot of things are happening. The speed of the 60th anniversary is elevating. We just had the 60th anniversary concert, in which the new theme tune was revealed, and the new theme for 15. That's right, Shooty Gutwa's theme, and I gotta say, it's a banger. It's a Viscount banger.
It's a banger, even out of context. And yes, there's a lot going on. Guys, there's also a lot going on in the Pull to Open universe. Yes, sorry for looking inward so much on this one, but there's a lot going on. So yes, we have our new Substack at pulltoopen.net. But we are also on Patreon finally. Yes, we have joined the ranks. If you want to support this here podcast, all you need to do is go down to patreon.com/pull-to-open and become a member. And if you want to do that, we would be eternally grateful. Tell your friends about it. Please support the podcast. We really want to keep putting all this content out there essentially for free for anyone who wants to listen or read. At some point, maybe something might go paid on the Substack. I don't know what that would be, but we'll see. But we really want to take this whole thing to the next level. And the only real way to do that is with support, even if it's just interacting on one of our many social networks with the podcast itself, voting on Spotify. You're going to hear about all of that in the coming minutes. But anyway, patreon.com/pull-to-open is a place to check out. And please consider becoming a member if you're a fan of the pod.
Yeah, please support us because we are, as I say, we're going to get this massive influx of Doctor Who. It's possible that we will get a new location for Doctor Who in the US, or we're certainly going to get it on Disney Plus soon. I don't know if RTD is hinting that what the UK got on iPlayer is also going to get on Disney Plus. But regardless, we're going to get a lot, especially with the appearance of the Toymaker, a lot of new Who fans interested in old Who, and which podcast is bouncing around, apparently stuck in old Who for knows how long. Here we are.
Which podcast has 4 thumbs and is all about bridging classic Who and new Who.
Hey, these guys.
One.
Whoa.
I didn't even say what just happened on Zencaster.
Oh my goodness. Fireworks just happened. That was crazy.
This is the most awesome use of AI there's ever been, because we are celebrating here, taking our podcast to the next level. Zencastr somehow knew it. Folks, this is a great time for me to just say, this is a fun thing to bring this podcast to you. And one of the reasons it is so fun is because of the service we use. It's called Zencastr. When we started out podcasting, we were a lot like the Doctor, didn't really know what we were doing with the equipment we had. But over time, we kind of figured it out. And really, ever since we switched to Zencastr, it has been a dream. It's really like, I don't know, say an instantaneous transport system that beams things from city to city in mere seconds.
That's right, but it actually works, though, instead of that system, which can be easily disrupted by Ice Warriors.
Yeah, but it's that level of convenience we're talking about. All you have to do, of course, is create your recording room in the cloud, send a link to your guests, and Zencastr handles all the rest. It records studio quality sound and video up to 4K, plus it has all the tools you need to host, create, distribute, and monetize your podcast all in one place. Whether you have your own podcast, and I certainly know some of you do, or you're thinking about starting one, we would strongly encourage you to check out Zencastr. So set your browser coordinates to zencastr.com/pricing. Use our code IPUSH, that's IPUSH, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences that we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It is time to share your story. Remember, the site is zencastr.com/pricing, and the code is IPUSH.
You know, I only just got that. When I was listening to last week's show, I was like, IPUSH. Oh, wait, pull to open, IPUSH. Okay, yeah, got it. Thanks. A little slow on the uptake. But if you've been slow on the uptake and you've not reviewed us yet, please do so, because that is another way to get this fabulous explanatory podcast in front of more fans who are only just discovering classic show, perhaps classic show fans who are just discovering the new show. Hey, we're open to all. But if you're on Apple Podcasts especially, please, it is your duty, I dare say, to leave us a review, because they help us get more visible, especially if they're 5 stars. Maybe you see 5 lights, I don't know. Share it with a random friend. That's the other thing you can do is just pick someone at random out of your address book and send them this podcast. And then when they text back, hey, who is this new phone? You're like, just never mind. Peace out. Enjoy the podcast. But yeah, go ahead and share that. And if you have any social media experience, we are looking for a little help on the social media side. We have so many tentacle arms here on Pull to Open that we need extra armor appraisers. If anyone's interested out there, get in touch.
Yeah, just a quick note on that. So we really wanted, like as you can tell from everything we're talking about, we really want to take the podcast to the next level. We really could use some help with that. If you are a fan of the pod, you would like to help out and maybe have some social media savvy, please, give us a ring.
Yeah, give us a bell.
Yeah. Call our phone in our time ship. It doesn't matter what time zone it's in. No, probably
I promise your phone will absolutely not turn into a time worm. Promise.
Better method might be to DM us on any of our places you can find us. Pull to Open 63 on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, or you could go ahead and email us at pulltoopenpodcast@gmail.com. That's pulltoopenpodcast@gmail.com. Get in touch. Say you want to help us out with the social media side, and we can get a conversation going. So please do that.
That's right. We're just a couple of guys standing in front of a podcast audience asking you to slide into our DMs.
And speaking of people who are helping out, thank you everyone who replied to our recent call for a reload on the Whomoji challenge.
Oh boy.
You betcha. The Whomoji challenge, of course, splintered in time. No, wait a second. That's something else.
Yep.
The Whomoji challenge is where I, as the host, I don't know how this worked out, but I'm also the host of the Whomoji challenge, get to torture our contestant, one Christopher Taylor, on what a set of emojis, what Doctor Who story title they might represent.
That's right. I do this every week, folks, and I do it for you, and I do it so that you will send us more reviews, and I voluntarily put myself through this nightmare because, once again, as is traditional at the beginning of every Whomoji challenge, the name of every Doctor Who story has suddenly fled my brain. So I'm flying blind without a net. Let's see what we got.
All right. Our dunk tank clown is in the tank. And this one comes at us from Twitter, or X, I believe it's called now. And it's from someone with the handle OnFTBB. So ONFTBB. And it is 3 emojis. Are you ready, sir?
As I'll ever be.
Okay. First emoji. Girl or woman. Then arrow pointing to the right.
Yeah.
And then skull.
Oh my god, I was hoping the third one was going to be in a fireplace. Is it
lucky?
Could it be the girl who died?
It's the girl who died.
Hey!
Nice one.
I realized that maybe all that time watching Cold Opens was not wasted because it was kind of a crash course in the name of every new Who story. So I realized I had better odds than I thought.
We're gonna have to keep the Whomoji challenge on locked on to classic for to really challenge you here. Good job, and thank you on FTBB.
Oh yes,
good stuff.
Thanks, BB.
All right, folks. Hey, we want to talk to you guys right now. You guys, who know what I'm talking about? You Spotify listeners. You folks who know there are even more ways to interact with the show over there. You can, of course, rate the show on your mobile app, but you can also rate the story in the poll feature, which fuels a little segment we like to call Poll to Open. So, of course, every week, Chris and I give a rating to whatever Doctor Who story we're talking about with our trademark rating system. Wait for the full explanation for that at the end of the show. But of course, we kick it to you guys, the viewers, on what you guys thought of it, and we have some results.
That's right. The poll to open of death for the Ambassadors of Death, and wow, it's another victory for you, Pete, because you rated this one a Dalek, and that is the winner with the plurality of votes. 33.3% voted this a Dalek. Congratulations, sir. I am equal second at my rating, the Professor Hater. Got 22%, so did the Ogron. We got 11% for a Viscount Banger.
Yeah.
On the Ambassadors of Death, interesting, and 11% for Lady Cassandra. So people liked how it looked. They loved that trippy Sarlacc pit-like spaceship, I guess, and voted it, pretty but paper-thin plot. So interesting. But these votes are still open. There are still many thousands of days left on the poll. We've deliberately set them as far into the future as we can, so that you, when you're watching the 70th anniversary special, can still go back and vote on the Ambassadors of Death. Because who doesn't want to do that?
Well, maybe 67th.
little quick math there. Okay, you've got until the 67th anniversary, but hey, why not vote now? Create a burner account, log in, follow us on Spotify. Again, we do need just a few more Spotify followers. We're growing expeditiously on there. We might have a few more things to do on Spotify once that happens. But yeah, and Pete, I believe we're also on YouTube, as you've mentioned, where you can leave emoji titles.
You bet. YouTube.com/poll-to-open. Even if you subscribe to us on a podcast app and, of course, our new Substack, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to us also on YouTube?
Where you can find our Toymaker summary, because a lot of people, a lot of new series fans are curious about the Toymaker. We explained it all in our segment TLDW that's coming up. It's the only 2-minute explainer of the Celestial Toymaker, I believe you will find out there on YouTube today. Entirely possible there are others. However, it's doing pretty well.
Yeah. And if you liked our plot summary, please check out our podcast on the Celestial Toymaker.
Yeah, we have lots to say on that, including how it might tie in to the ongoing series, which we're about to find out in the next month. It's so exciting. Follow us on TikTok. It's Pull2Open 60 on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, kind of sort of threads, and also Pull2Open on Blue Sky. And feel free to drop us a line there. Feel free to also give me the names of some other social networks that I can read out, so that I can continue to procrastinate from the segment that is coming up, where it's my turn to summarize the summary of death, of the Seeds of Death. It's coming up in TLDW.
Are you feeling deadly, Chris?
Well, should we talk quickly about the... Let's talk about the new show. Hey, we got some news. I just listened.
News. That's true.
Yeah.
All right. I'll let you start.
You know what? I listened this week to the concert that you can hear on BBC Sounds, even if in the US. Highly recommend it. Give it a listen. The BBC did a 60th anniversary concert in which Russell T Davies, Stephen Moffat, and Chris Chibnall were all present, all spoke about their doctors, about their music. Murray Gold was up there on stage, and he introduced not only the themes for Ruby, New Companion, for 15, a theme simply called 15, which I think I'd say is a Viscount banger, but also the new for 2023 theme tune, which is galloping along in Murray Gold style, perhaps a slightly different gallop. Pete, you were a little cool on the theme tune when you first heard it.
Yeah, I'm a traditionalist, right? Like when Doctor Who came back for the first time in 2005, and they had clearly emulated it on the time tunnel sort of look and sound of essentially the Baker years and the Pertwee years a bit. And I thought that was like, oh, great. Now, that said, things do need experimentation. You need to change things up. But I will say my kind of change up sort of keeps the overall structure of it. And I really, really like the Davison titles, mostly because it's a stylistic change and they don't really change so much the structure of it. The notes themselves are, to the point where emphasis sort of gets shifted. So that said, so I was not really a fan, for example, of the Smith stuff, at least at the start, because it sort of changes the drum beat, right? It's like don't, it's instead of the dun dun dun, it's like don't, like it's like it does a different thing. Which again, I get it. You got to experiment. I'm not a huge fan. And this seems to be that again, right? Like it seems to be like, okay, let's do a little something different, a little unexpected with what the drums are. And it comes back around. It's not like it totally abandons it. But that always throws me. I'm sorry. I'm kind of, you might call me an originalist with respect to the theme. Again, I admire experimentation. I do think with a big reboot like this, it might not be the time to experiment. I would rather they sort of went the traditionalist route.
Well, so much depends on the opening titles, doesn't it? And that great sense of motion that RTD had and Murray Gold had, and they just the visuals and the visuals of the time tunnel and the music always seem to line very well in their first era. So
that's kind of what we're missing now, right? The visuals. Yeah. That's also why I feel a little cheated. Like I kind of don't like that they revealed it early, right? Like I'd rather that the whole world encountered it the first time it's broadcast, which I assume will be with the specials, right?
Yeah, one would assume. It does say 2023 rather than 2024, so it's we're not looking at the theme for Shooty, or assume it will be the theme for Shooty's Run, and just for everything with RTD going forward. But no, I like, you know what, I like it as a Trojan horse, as it were, for making people listen to this entire concert, which I gotta say, just really, if you're listening to this on the weekend after you've listened to the podcast, just fire up that concert. It's a beautiful thing to just have on in the background. Some wonderful performances from the BBC Orchestra of Wales there, and just some great songs that you may have forgotten about, like the song from A Christmas Carol. Silence Is All You Know. A beautiful, beautiful tune. It just sends chills down your spine. So it's all wonderfully done. Go listen to the whole concert and accept that they are postponing until the end. But listen along for things like Stephen Moffat talking about who his favorite doctor is. He actually does name a doctor.
Potentially controversial opinion.
Please.
Don't listen to the concert. I mean, I know it's not spoilers per se. But if there's such a thing as musical spoilers, it's kind of like I said at the titles, right? Like you kind of want things in context. Does getting all the music in advance kind of spoil something for you? Maybe there's a chance. I don't know. I'll confess, I have not listened to the whole concert, and this is what's keeping me from doing it. Is exactly this. Do I really want to listen to everything, or do I want to just sort of experience the music with the drama I'm seeing on screen? I'm a little split. I might break down and just kind of do it, but I understand that idea of like, no, I don't even want emotional spoilers with respect to the music. And
let me just set your mind at ease and say that there are just two songs, just Ruby's tune and 15. Well, and the new version of the theme tune, which you've already heard that. Yeah. So you can just, and they clearly flag it. I believe it's Murray Gold introducing it. So, not to worry. There is just pause the concert at that point, but otherwise enjoy some fabulous Doctor Who music, because up until that point, it's all stuff you already know.
All right. Well, speaking of spoilers, it is time for anyone who has not seen The Seeds of Death to get the entire story spoiled, so we can have a full-fledged commentary after that rapid fire plot summary with a little segment we like to call TLDW, Too Long Didn't Watch, Too Long Doctor Who. And we allot 30 seconds for every classic series episode, which is roughly 25 minutes. So the person who will be summarizing the plot of The Seeds of Death will have a full 3 minutes. Time to stretch out a little bit.
Yeah. And go for a walk, do some knitting.
That person to this week is one Christopher Taylor. And is he ready?
As I'll ever be. I will say that the more that we do this, the more I'm kind of thinking in my head as I watch the show, like, what is my TLDW summary going to be? So I'm still not writing anything down. I'm still doing it without notes. I'm still flying blind. This could all still end disastrously, but I have sort of been rehearsing a few lines in my head through the week, so it's sort of interesting how the TLDW evolves along with the rest of the show. We're not quite on our 100th TLDWX. We only started that, I think, at some point in season 2 of Pull to Open. But we're getting up there. So I'm feeling pretty confident, is what I'm going to say, and I'm ready for that Mistress Fate to smack my face with some hubris.
Well, it's funny for this episode. You say you're getting good at like editing in advance and thinking about what you're going to do in advance. I don't know if this particular story would benefit a lot from like mental notes. So we'll see if that gives you an advantage. But it is time to see and hear the official Pull to Open summary of the Seeds of Death in 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so it's the 21st century, and everyone is wearing underpants on the outside of their pants, and they also have this system called the T-Mats that transfers stuff up to the moon and around the world, and the moon seems to be a blockage point in this because there's some idiot up there who's routing stuff badly, and he gets a superior goes up to the moon to try to tell him he's doing it wrong. But what's this? There's someone else up on the moon, and there's a mysterious alien up there. Meanwhile, the Doctor, Zoe, and Jamie land in. They think they're in space, but no, they're in a space museum, not the space museum, different one owned by Professor Eldred, who's a guy who used to use rockets before the T-Mat messed everything up, and he's got this rocket that's ready to go, which is handy because the government officials come bursting in and they're like, the T-Mat's messed up. We need to take your rocket to the moon. And he's like, no, I can't do it. I've got a heart condition. The Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe are like, we can do it. So they go up to the moon. But with all the stuff that's happening on the moon, where it turns out to be ice warriors have invaded, they're using it as a staging post for Earth, but they want to use the T-Mat, and there's this guy called Fusham, and he's collaborating. He works with the Ice Warriors because he's just a dude. He doesn't want to die, and he doesn't realize that what they're getting him to do is send these seeds around the world to these different cities, all in the northern hemisphere, strangely. And the seeds expand like balloons, and they spread this fungus everywhere. And they knock out the Doctor, who's arrived on the moon base and been captured by the Ice Warriors, and they show the seeds to him, but it knocks him out for an entire episode. And they intend to transmat him to the middle of space, but the Doctor gets saved by Zoe and this other guy called Phipps, who drag him out, or is it Jamie? I can't even remember at this stage. There's a lot of running around the moon base. Anyway, there's a lot of attempting to sort of drag the Ice Warriors into these solar things that the Doctor eventually uses to destroy them. He makes them portable, and the Doctor also figures out that you can destroy the fungus that is now spreading across the northern hemisphere. The goal of which is to reduce the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere and make it cold enough. The Ice Warriors, so it's just like Mars. They're invading us. But it can be destroyed by water. So it's all about getting to the weather control. But what's this? The Ice Warriors have fused the weather control, so it's always dry in Britain now for some reason. And but the Doctor goes in there and he fights through the foam, the fungus foam, and they have this false signal that diverts the invasion fleet. It just sends them into the sun, and that's it. And a lot of people die, and they still try to fix the T-Mat, and the Doctor, Jamie, and Zoe leave while they're debating.
Not bad. You got it.
Yeah. I failed to say that. Yes, the weather control assault does actually succeed, and then it does rain again, and it rains a lot.
Did you miss the bit where they turn on they raise the temperature at the moon base?
Yes.
Because that was seemed like kind of a big deal at the time.
Shenanigans
that was the one thing I was
covered.
kind of waiting for. And if I don't, the weather control, whatever, but that was the one thing I would say is probably a key bit that's missing from your summary. But otherwise, great job.
Right, it's getting hot up in the moon base. The Ice Warriors take off all the clothes.
Is it ever? I don't know. I want to that's kind of a nitpick, but I want to just zero in right there because that was the thing that I just went holy crap! That the temperature of the moon base raises to okay. We have to set a little bit of context, but it's Zoe is to turn on the heat essentially at the moon base. First of all, it's instantaneous, it's 20 degrees Celsius raised within seconds in the air, and it's raised from 20 to 40. At one point, it's actually on 60, which is higher than the hottest temperature ever recorded on Earth. in Death Valley in like 1913 or something. It was like 57, 56 degrees Celsius. And in other words, not only would this not just incapacitate ice warriors, but definitely kill them, it would kill all the humans.
Well, I gotta say, yeah, yes, you are right, but I can also believe it. Because as you say, Zoe does turn on the heat, and we may have talked before in the Crotons podcast about my crush on Wendy Padbury, whose very name suggests a warm cup of tea on a British day. Wendy Padbury is Zoe, big companion crush for me. So yeah, she can turn on the heat. And it is always 60 degrees Celsius. It is always 60 degrees in my heart when she's on screen. And before we go a little too far in this, we've been talking in this Old Who adventure of like how we watched it. Like we had that with the Mythmakers last time because of course it was a missing episode. But I want to say I'm out here flying blind, Pete. I'm sort of in a rocket heading towards the sun because I've quit BritBox. I quit. Yes, I rage quit BritBox because they raised the price, and this was the first classic show where I had to go looking, perhaps in some nefarious areas, for ways that I could watch the Seeds of Death here in the US.
There's a DVD wandering around somewhere.
There's DVD wandering around.
That's more than a monthly subscription to BritBox, if you want.
It is. But you know what else there is for free, ladies and gentlemen, on the Internet Archive? There is a slightly colorized version of the Seeds of Death.
How about that?
It's there. It's up. It's legit. Now, is it a good colorized version? No. But it's serviceable. It looks great whenever Zoe's on the screen, so I was a fan. Got to say, Zoe and Jamie look so fabulous in this colorized version. It's worth it just for that. The rest of it, like, there's a bit of flickering. Patrick Troughton looks weirdly sick, but the two of them, they, I mean, my goodness, if Zoe and Jamie weren't doing it on the TARDIS, they ought to have been, because what a couple they made. Jamie looks so handsome in his sporran.
Well, speaking of doing it, I'm glad we're zooming out here. Sorry, but I had to get the nitpick in on the thermometer quickly.
Thank you.
Because it was just like that was this time around watching Seeds of Death, and I hadn't seen it in decades. That was the thing that stood out to me the most. Like, everyone should be dead. But speaking of this, and I'm really kind of curious about this colorized version now that I'm hearing about it, because I looked at Seeds of Death, and as I'm watching, I'm thinking this probably needs to be in color to be appreciated, because I'll just say it, like, it kind of struck me this could possibly be one of the gayer episodes of Doctor Who, just because, like, you see all these uniforms which are kind of tight fitting and they kind of look like they have underwear on the outside, and you know, those interesting lines essentially that they have. As I don't know why this struck me, but in the first couple of episodes, at least with the first two, I think it's episode 2 and 3, you see the Ice Warriors. You get a lot of shots of the Ice Lord leader, or I guess the name is Slar. You get a lot of shots of him from behind. Yeah, and they just kind of lingering on his butt, and you're just like,
that's
okay,
right.
What is going on here?
Slar's costume is a helmet, basically, and not much else.
And then Jamie has this sort of form-fitting top with kind of a swashbuckler thing up here. Honestly, it looks straight out of the International Mail catalog. Like, I mean, it's kind of nuts. And then, you know, you think about, and you just, once my head was in this space, everything just seemed really gay. Like, everyone's playing in foam and balloons by the end. And
that's right.
You know, like, it's basically kind of like this pride parade. The Grand Marshal that you see on screen, he has like sequins on his helmet. Everybody gets wet at the end.
That's right.
Solution. And
the solution is make it rain, people. It's raining men.
And you have all these warriors who are just sort of big dudes who are kind of hairy, and you know, it's a little bit okay. So we got a bunch of bears essentially running around. It's like, yes, all right, so yeah, this is what's happening. It's basically kind of musical theater a little bit, with, like, especially with Michael Ferguson as the director. So he's the director of this episode, and he basically takes a moment I forget if it's episode 3 or 4, but it's like in the middle. It's the one Troughton's in, so it's probably episode 3 because there's this crazy chase in the moon base that is just so over the top camp. It's literally like something out of a musical where the Doctor's running around, his hands are going up in panic as he sees the Ice Warriors. They're all kind of lumbering around in kind of almost like a dance. And they're kind of dancing throughout. They're almost played for comic relief. Like, this is kind of a goofy, gay in every sense of the word episode of Doctor Who.
And it's fabulous. It should definitely, first of all, be called the Balloons of Death, not the Seeds of Death, because that's what's happening. These balloons are expanding and they're spreading glitter everywhere. No, they're spreading fungus seeds. But yeah, the foam is just off the hook. I mean, if you liked the foam in oh god, why do I always
Fury
forget
from the Deep?
Fury from the Deep, thank you. Which breaks out into an impromptu foam party on the beach. But this is indoor foam, people. This is much more fun. And Zoe gets in it, Jamie gets in it. Patrick Troughton slips in it at one point, which when Pedbury is trying not to crack up at that point. You can actually see that because he did legit slip in the foam. That wasn't supposed to happen. But
I
yeah,
watched this with my daughter, and
Mhm.
she was constantly saying, like, "Oh my god, that looks so fun!" Like, she said, "That looks like heaven." Like, she was just like so into the foam. It was just like, yeah, it does look like fun. And like Troughton there is doing his best when he's banging on the door, and the foam's all just coming at him, and he's trying to pretend it's like this is panic time, but he's having fun. He goes in for a bath, and he's just goofing around. I gotta wonder like how many takes he just spent like just goofing around. Like, hey, this is super awesome.
Well, not only is the Seeds of Death Martian gay pride, but it's also fabulous for the ladies, for feminism, which was on the rise at the time when this aired in 1969, but not so on the rise that they didn't think that in the 20th century a woman would still be called Miss Kelly.
Right.
If she was
we can't get everything right.
But it's a good episode for Miss Kelly's agency, because she's climbing the corporate ladder here. She has no respect for her boss. She literally goes over her boss's head, transmats herself to the moon, gets into the thick of the action, really reprimands this Fuchsium, the coward, who's given a pretty good story himself. But yeah, it's good for her. She has the most fabulous ponytail in all of Doctor Who. It really
she's got the one exception. Like her uniform, still looks great. It's just she doesn't have to wear the dumb overalls or whatever that everyone else is kind of wearing. And yeah, you're totally right. I guess the actress is Louise Pajot. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but she's great. She gives this great performance of a very, extremely competent person. I like that nothing's made of it, that it's in the future. And it's just, yes, she's in this great position. She's incredibly smart, and she just happens to be a woman. And, that's everyone just sort of can just see that for themselves. One issue that it does create, and this isn't necessarily make it a bad episode, she kind of gets in Zoe's space. So
yeah.
For companion wise, I think this is a great episode for Jamie, not as good for Zoe, because Zoe, her heroics amount to crawling through some conduits. And again, she's exactly companion width, I guess, the same as Sarah Jane. So she can fit perfectly through conduits.
That old trope.
And turning the temperature up mostly, right? And then she helps out a little bit in the weather control stuff at the end, but of course all the action is left to the boys. So she doesn't really get to do a lot here because, again, all the scientific competence and problem solving ends up falling on Kelly, which makes sense. I mean, she understands TMAT, and she's the expert, and she gets moved around. But Zoe's space, particularly after the first couple of episodes where she sort of helps with the rocket, but it's mostly off screen. You don't really get much more with her. She just gets
she gets to dress Jamie down about, like, can you just stand here and watch this fuel level go up, and when it gets to full, press this button. Do you think you can do that, Jamie? Poor guy.
Oh,
all right. Hey, I know how to do that. I'm sorry. Sorry, Fraser Hines. But yeah, it's not great. But you'd think that Miss Kelly would be a good friend for her, but no, they don't really get to bond, which is a shame. We should mention the script is kind of a mess because
Oh my god,
Brian Hales wrote it. Brian Hales was apparently so just messed up out of his head, man, by the fact that it may not have been Jamie. Because they were going to replace him with a character called Nick. N-I-K. Who? What? Yes. Yeah. Someone should write a book one day on the lost companions of Doctor Who. Because I remember Russell T Davies talking about there was going to be a companion called Penny in the season that Donna was in until Catherine Tate decided to come back. So like Penny has been lost to the mists of time. Well, Nick has also been lost to the mists of time. We had no idea who Nick was going to be or why writing for him should cause Brian Hales such problems. And also inserting a Patrick Troughton's on vacation for episode 4 request apparently just messed him up as well. And he got docked half pay for most of these episodes.
Because Terrence Dix basically had to come in and finish it off.
Yep.
So, by the way, there's a novelization of The Seeds of Death. I have it, and I was reading it as I was sort of watching it. And I will say, get yourself some Terrence Dix novelizations, folks, if you're ever having trouble falling asleep at night. No, I kid. I kid a little. It is like Terrence Dix, again, I'm not trying to knock him too much as a writer, although I will have some stuff to say in directions he went in the last few episodes here, particularly the last one. But his novelizations, and I'm not the first one to observe this, tend to be so straightforward and so sort of by the numbers, sort of recounting what was on screen. I think partially because there was certainly starting to become an awareness in the sort of late 70s of the destruction of episodes. And I think he was sort of thinking it needs to be more of a rote recreation of the story as opposed to sort of taking it into an interesting new direction, which some of the better books do. Right. So in other words, the novelization doesn't really add a lot to this, but you can kind of like the thing is I have a lot of credit for Dix and a lot of, I guess, criticism for him because early on, like if he did episode 3, which I think he did, I mean, all the running around, I'm not sure how much was Dix and how much was Ferguson, the director, but like it's so silly. It's like so bad it's good, right? Like it's just pure camp. And that line where he goes, "Your leader will be very angry if you kill me. You see, I'm a genius." And the Warriors and they both turn and look at each other like, oh, wow. Like it is so goofy. Like, okay, yeah, this is fun. You can't not love that if you're a fan of this era of Doctor Who and sort of the impish performance of Patrick Troughton as the Doctor. It's just perfect.
Can we talk about the representation of the Ice Warriors? Because is it just me, or does the heavy breathing get heavier the more that we go into this? Speaking of this being a camp, very putting it all out there kind of story. My goodness, so it was very warm here in San Francisco when I was watching some of these episodes, and I thought, hey, I'll just open the door of my house and and then I had to close it again while I was watching this because the heavy breathing got so loud. That I was like, I don't want my neighbors to think I'm watching porn. It just
there it is.
They're like Darth Vader when he's getting very excited. Like the speed of the breathing is just a little too much. Did that resonate for you at all, Pete?
Yeah, absolutely.
You into Ice Warrior breathing? It's
one of these things where the Ice Warrior performances, again, they're bordering on the intentionally comical, and I sort of chalk up the long S's and the heavy breathing to all of it. I will say, like many episodes of this era, it's 2 or 3 episodes too long. It is really tiresome after a while. So I think that's a little bit unavoidable. I guess you kind of have to sort of think about people who were watching it back in the day, 1 episode a week over a period of a month and a half. You probably didn't have the same effect as like binging the whole thing, which is more or less what kind of we do here. So I can sort of forgive it for that. But
there's a lot of padding.
Well, I can also headcanon it, right? Like if the warmer it is, the harder it is for them to breathe. And presumably that's what's going on. Now, when they're in control of the moon base, I don't know why they wouldn't tick the temperature down to something like 5 degrees Celsius so that they're okay and the humans are sort of barely able to function. So that's a weird choice on just the Ice Warriors point, you know?
Yeah, they're so into it when they go to Earth, you know, they're going straight to weather control and make sure that the rain doesn't happen. Which, yeah, again, interesting choice in the UK. That they could stop the rain. You have to headcanon the possibility the weather control could do that.
You know, and it's one of those things to just stay on the Ice Warriors for a bit. Like, I don't know why I can, you know, actually barely remember what happens in Cold War, but why they haven't ever reversed that. You know what I mean? Like, it's always like turn up the heat to defeat the Ice Warriors. How come the Ice Warriors aren't smart enough? Like, why don't we turn it down to below freezing so we can kick ass and everyone else has to bundle up and is freezing to death?
Yeah, why don't they get some suits made of the material in thermos containers, pad them with ice, you know, just totally fill up on ice, and just like then they're immune. They're immune to Zoe turning up the heat. They can just chill all day in their ice. They're just super cool. They can even throw in a line about how cool they are. Well, there we go. RTD, call us if you're thinking of bringing the Ice Warriors back.
Well, if you do, I'll just say maybe make them more competent tacticians and strategists. So, again, this is not the only Ice Warriors story. There have been other ones, certainly in New Who. There's actually a really good one in Big Finish called Red Dawn. It's one of the earlier episodes. But my God, this whole plan of theirs. Okay, let's pick it apart, shall we?
Yes.
For fun. Let's inventory all the issues with their plan.
Yeah. Okay. So they want to invade. They want to use the transmat. They want to spread this fungus via the transmat that's going to immediately asphyxiate people. But somehow the fungus is also going to get out into the AC. You know, there are a lot of not believable things about the 21st century that they represent here. Perhaps
oh my God, that's a whole other issue.
That's a whole other issue. But perhaps one of the most unbelievable things is that they don't have the AC running all the time. In these TMAT offices, they have to turn it on in order to clear out this fungusy stuff that's asphyxiating them.
Yeah, they got a lot wrong about the 21st century. That's kind of an understatement.
We'll get to that.
Anyway, the Ice Warriors plan depends on them taking control of TMAT. But they take control of it without really understanding how it works. It depends entirely on capturing technicians and depending on their cooperation and collaboration, which seems they're pretty lucky they got a guy like Fuchsia who's a total coward, right? So now the Warriors are just on a tactical level, they're very slow. They just lumber around. They can apparently be overpowered by humans just grabbing their arm, and they can't see what's plainly in front of them. Like there's a bit like I didn't really even understand that bit in the closet early on. I forget is the guy's name Phipps who's hiding, and
Phipps, yes,
yeah, and the warrior essentially turns and kind of looks at him and doesn't see him. Yeah. It might be a problem with the lighting in that scene, but it's a problem. And
I'd love to say that the colorization solves that and shows that Phipps is wearing clothing that's the exact same color as the solar lights in that room that he's wearing. But no, it's not camouflage. It's just a weird error.
Well, this is supposed to be like a warrior, right? This is supposed to be like a military guy who's actually competent, which I'm clearly not. There's a bit where Sklar wants to kill the Doctor by beaming him into space, essentially. And it's like, you know, you have a bunch of guns. Yeah. If you want to just kill the Doctor, you can just do it immediately.
The headcanon I've seen on that is that it's more of a punishment for Fuchsia. Like, you know, this guy, he's a coward, and he's just sort of agreeing to send these shipments around the world without even knowing what's in it. He's just obeying orders. Hey, he's just trying to live, man. He's just trying to work. I get it. But no, Sklar really wants him to feel his own cowardice, right? So this is one way to do it. Like, first of all, he doesn't need to explain what the seeds are, but he does that anyway. And he doesn't need to explain where he's, this whole thing of like sending the Doctor into space. So that I like that theory that he's just doing it to make Fuchsia feel his own cowardice. Like you're going to kill a human. He thinks he's a human at this stage.
Yeah, that's not bad, actually.
Human.
I like that. Even though it's a bit of a distraction when you have a lot of things to do still on your to-do list to actually get your plan to invade the Earth completely done. So, speaking of which, they send one ice warrior to Earth armed with just one sonic gun and basically just to take control of the planet. Now, here's where I'll take a step back and be like, okay, for an episode like Seeds of Death, and this isn't the only episode of Doctor Who like this, you kind of need to... It's like what you describe as a fever dream, the dream logic to it, where you kind of essentially depend on an audience heuristic of like, okay, yes, we only have a couple of rooms for our set. We only have a few characters to really represent what's going on Earth. You kind of have to just take all that as a given that, oh, okay, we don't really see the president of Earth, or at this point, it seems like the Secretary General of the UN or whoever, and they're in charge. But everything's ostensibly controlled by one room at TMAT and one weather control station that's a few buildings away, like it's a university campus or something. So you just kind of have to go with that. It's kind of like going with the two cities in Genesis of the Daleks being super close to each other and somehow waging a planetary war against each other. It's dream logic.
Doctor Who's always doing this, and the question is, can it successfully distract you until the story is over before you start noticing these things?
And I think generally this story does a decent job of that. So I'm not really docking points for that. But I will dock points for not sending more warriors to Earth and taking control of the TMAT stations, because when you see, like, even as you're watching it, they beam these seeds to Earth. And they're kind of, well, why not just leave them in the chamber? Like, you don't have to go in and grab them. And once that happens arguably you could say, okay, they didn't know what it was. The stuff goes wrong, blah, blah, blah. There's problems in London. Why not call every other TMAT station immediately? Like, either shut it down, or even if you can't shut it down, don't open the door. Just leave the seeds in there.
Apparently, in the future, nobody talks to anyone directly. They all have to talk through this, what I'm going to describe as the most annoying Alexa voice that you've ever heard, and it's so funny. I mean, it's just it's almost watching this just for like how wrong and right they get the 21st century. Wrong. Miss Kelly is still called Miss and not Ms. But right, like she's kick ass. She can go climb the corporate ladder. Now wrong. One thing that's very wrong is the way that TMAT can just be basically blocked up by one person. Like the entire system, the infrastructure can be blocked up by one person. But right, I like the sort of the echo on the Ice Warrior side of them just sending one guy. It's one guy can block up the whole system. So I love that.
I like this. I do like the idea of the spirit of Seeds of Death anyway, where it's clearly a complacent Earth. They even explicitly say it. They've lost interest in space travel, or at least space exploration, and all humanity's turned inward. They basically like, okay, we have this super convenient transmat system, which has more or less eliminated scarcity. And we have this world computer, which seems to be, the voice is like, this is what Chat GPT is going to become, right? It's like, oh, we just asked the AI to do things. But it's interesting. So it gives us reports, and we're good.
Thank you for reminding me that that's what we were actually talking about. It slipped my mind for a second. But yeah, it's at one point, Zoe is trying to talk to this guy in the weather control center, and the Alexa basically reports back to her, no, in the annoying voice, sorry, he's not available. And then she's like, I'm going to have to find my way there. But instead of saying, hey, Alexa, how do I get to the weather control center? She just charges off like, oh, I guess we're just going to have to find our way there. Right? You don't necessarily, it's just wonderful the way that this makes us realize what you were thinking about the future in the 60s. Like, yes, this sort of notion of personal assistance and computers talking to us and computers knowing everything, they had it there, but we weren't thinking through the full implications, i.e. Google Maps,
Right.
We just have directions to everywhere.
Speaking of which, like, there's just so much analog tech here. I mean, it's kind of, again, it's a little hilarious in hindsight, and some of it's just stuff in the past, but I mean, it's it's just fun to watch. Because first, there's all the manual hooking up of stuff to sort of activate solar panels and these sort of, the big battery thing that the Doctor throws together, which is kind of like hilariously full of wires. And
he loves his wires.
I mean, yeah, it's just fun. And there's loose wires all over the place. Like especially when he fixes the weather control thing, it just spills out. And the temperature control I found hilarious. It's like this ship's helm. Basically, it's just there on the wall, and there's no other stuff. There's like a point where Phipps is doing something in the closet, and there's actually like a vacuum tube that he has to replace. This is for like the signal on the rocket or something early on. And then there's all those like stuff that just the Ice Warriors of the bulky transmitter unit, all the stuff in the station has all these switches. Again, it's just sort of fabulously analog.
Yeah, the solar projector things that constantly need to be fixed. Just giant bulbs, basically the Ice Warriors look like they're being called in for a photo session.
Yeah, they're influencers, right?
We're going to put you on Ice Warrior Instagram. It's going to be fabulous. Yes, I'm an influencer. But there's a bit where Miss Kelly is having to replace. She's just like fixing one of these lights, and she's doing it so badly. You can see that the actress is just sort of rooting around in this thing, but. It is the perfect reason for her to have that ponytail, which just gets in the way of the camera enough. So you can think that she's working on fixing something. You vaguely get that idea.
Well, just to say on Kelly for 1 second, this isn't anything to do with her, but I think it's in episode 2 when they're launching the rocket. There is a weird, all I can describe it as is a QR code over the screen at some point. Did you see that? No. It's just kind of... It's incomprehensible. It's this weird QR code that appears on screen.
Whoa.
That I think is supposedly like what she is looking at. And actually, I held my phone up to this just to see if it would like activate something. It doesn't. But it was a weird moment. So like it's the one sort of, I don't know. Someone write it and tell me what that is.
You're not talking about the shot of future Alexa where it's just like squares within squares within squares, right?
No, this is literally super. I'm going to throw it out on the Twitter feed. I actually put it on my own Twitter this past week. I'll throw it out on the Pull to Open Twitter feed and like, what the hell is this? What is this QR code? Does anyone know?
Wow.
Weird
Doctor
moment.
Who accurately predicts QR codes in the 21st century. That's our headline here. But yeah, as you say, they also, just to get back to that point, they do like, let's not harp on the TMAT and the whole, teleport thing and how that doesn't work. And, we talked about this before on Pull to Open with other Doctor Who stories that use teleports. The randomizer does seem to like to take us to them.
Yeah, I'm not going to pick apart teleportation technology. I think that's a completely fine sci-fi concept to do. What I would pick apart, and this is a very Doctor Who nerd thing to pick apart, I'll admit, but others have done it, which is that why is TMAT non-existent or virtually non-existent in stories set after this era, right? Because this is clearly like the 21st century. I think there's really no way to sort of fit it anywhere else because the Doctor sort of says early on, the rocket design is 21st century. So it's either in the 21st century or really soon after. And the TMAT is like, super Star Trek level technology. Why doesn't it feature? And there's a lot of theories about this, right? Most of them are like economic, like it's just too expensive or it's a sort of an all or nothing thing. And they clearly couldn't do both space exploration and TMAT. So they just kind of had to go with one or the other. And eventually like this seems to be one of the many things, including Kill the Moon and Waters of Mars, that apparently like start to turn things around and people start to look outward again. So, yeah, but it is one of those weird things. Like you just never hear about TMAT again.
I was really hoping, so again, I haven't seen this before. I was really hoping that it would end with the people of Earth realizing that TMAT is more trouble than it's worth and that they should just go back to rockets. Now, instead, the argument at the end is a little more anodyne than that. It's about, should we... obviously we're going to restart TMAT, but do we, like, they haven't even learned that maybe you should have a backup system.
Yeah.
Which is so weird. And, it's a good.
It's kind of incomprehensible that they don't have any rockets. You know what I mean? Like that's the crazy thing. It's because TMAT can't be that established. Like if it was 100 years old and you never use a rocket again, sure. But if it's only just, it seems relatively not brand new, but like something that's clearly emerged in the last generation or so. And surely there would be some kind of like, okay, if we're dependent on this moon base, surely someone must have thought of what if everything just goes wrong? We're gonna need a rocket.
They do say at one point that they put communications satellites up. So I'm not sure how they're doing that, because you can't really TMAT a communication satellite.
Well, no manned rockets. That's the whole thing. They try to sort of explain that away. There's a few things that sort of seem like plot holes that are kind of explained away. Like one thing I always thought about this story was that why is the gravity on the moon basically the same as Earth? But there is a throwaway line that Zoe has in the rocket that says something like, I'm starting the gravity control, which would make them, oh, well, clearly they have some gravity, like it's logical to assume they had the same tech on the moon base. So that's fine.
It is so interesting. Speaking of the rocket, so interesting coming here from Ambassadors of Death, where we came from John Pertwee doing his facial expression of G-force. And now we get to see this TARDIS team do it. What do you think of how they simulated the experience of being a rocket? I think it actually looked much better, even if it's less accurate.
Yeah, it was all right. I like better, like when they're all panicky on Earth, like trying to say, hey, answer us. Oh my God, did something go wrong? And Zoe is the one to go like, hey, we've literally just taken off. Take a chill pill. Like that felt right to me. That was like a good little back and forth.
Yeah, absolutely. I did like the fact that Jamie kept being warned of the G-force. And that I would love more anticipation about that. There's opportunities, better writing opportunities left and right in the Seeds of Death. One of them being the old professor, who really I was expecting more from him as a character, Eldred.
What did you find wrong? I thought he was all right.
It was a bit of a hard left turn when he's like, we're supposed to believe that he's spent years kind of building this rocket and preparing it to blast off just because he thinks we should still use rockets. And then when the government literally shows up at his door and says, please, 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 let's use your rocket, he's like, nah, I was just, nah. I thought I was good at this, but now I'm not.
I wish they peeled back that a little more. I'll agree. I do like it because I think probably bringing too much headcanon into it, but it is that like he's just afraid of the responsibility. And I think once the rocket is successful and gets to the moon, he gets more confidence, and then he becomes much more of a sort of a helper and a pivotal character in the rest of the things that happen, even to a nonsensical degree, right? Because he's helping the Doctor develop some sort of response to the seed pods, which is like, well, isn't this guy a rocket specialist? Like, I mean, what's he doing? And why is he even have anything to say at this point, right? Like he's the rocket stuff's done. Like, you can go now, sir. And they're all kind of there in the TMAT headquarters as one of the main seemingly decision makers of what's going on here, or at the very least an advisor.
I mean, he that is at least his due as sort of savior of humanity there. I mean, you'd think that he would get more recognition and reward for that. But yeah, the guy's a Renaissance man who can also investigate fungus and help the Doctor find out that it could be destroyed by water. Which, by the way, yeah, okay. Let's talk about the water thing now. In a story that precedes the Seeds of Death by 69 years, called The War of the Worlds, invaders come from Mars and are eventually defeated not by the humans, who they completely, almost completely wipe out, but by bacteria, and it's a function of them being on Earth for long enough, and the bacteria takes them over. So I imagine that was a germ of that was what was in Brian Hales' mind, where it's like, these Martian seas, they explode, but they can be destroyed by something that's perfectly natural and normal on Earth and that's not on Mars. Water! Well, okay, well... Now, it's not his fault that we have since discovered that there's water on Mars, so the Ice Warriors be way familiar with it. But also, like, it's in their name. They get the concept of ice, so they kind of understand water. So you'd think they would know about this.
Well, in defense, Mars is still pretty dry, even though there is some water there. So and it does seem like it, as long as it doesn't rain, the seeds are going to do it. But
as long as it doesn't rain. But what about the fact that there are ponds, like there are hoses, there are fire departments? Surely here in the 21st century, still there are people
got through my inventory,
buckets.
my checklist of all the things that were wrong with the Martians' plan. So this is one of them. Oh, by the way, also on that list, they apparently have no plan to take over warmer areas of Earth.
Oh yeah,
so. That's an issue.
But it's all right, because they're going to immediately starve to death, apparently, without the TMAT functioning. It's like everyone just keels over and dies almost straight away. And like millions of people dying. And it's just sort of very casually officials come in and say, well, it's like the minister takes a dim view of all this famine that's suddenly broken out. The world is dying. That's another thing that Eldred says is like,
picturing some minister stuffing his face with chicken every 5, 6 things. Always eating in every meeting. There's a lot of weirdness of complacency about this. This is way worse than Wall-E Earth even. So back to the seed pods in the water. It's one of these things of sort of fever dream camp, so bad it's good, where he like pours all the stuff and it's like, what was that last one? It was like ordinary water. And I kind of almost think if you wrote that today, it would be like ordinary water. It's like, really? No, not really. What do you think? Just normal water is going to destroy a fungus? Like, don't be an idiot. Like, no, it was a complex thing that we're going to have to synthesize and put in clouds and like destroy this thing. Ordinary water? That's just dumb.
Who would do that? But yeah, I think it's, a lot of this is a sign that kind of, Doctor Who was not in the best way. If Doctor Who were a patient, this may be the time as it looks back. Certainly in the 60s and 70s is when it was closest to death, right? Because it was during the filming of Seeds of Death that Patrick Troughton's departure was announced. They didn't have a replacement. Viewing figures were going down, although interestingly they went up during the Seeds of Death.
People like the Ice Warriors.
Yeah, people love the Ice Warriors, so it was working. But yeah, like this is the Troughton era kind of grinding to an end. This will be Troughton. This is Troughton's last monster.
That's kind fair, of almost the Space Pirates is after this, and then they go right into the War Games.
That's right. So yeah, it's sort of the show feels a bit tired. Troughton certainly feels a bit tired. This is, by the way, the last time that a Doctor Who actor would go on vacation during the show.
Right.
And I have to be written out of an episode. So, Brian Hales, I'm sorry that it broke your brain, but like it's you you helped cement it. It's over. It's done. No more doctors on vacation. Never have to write them out again.
His claim to health and safety about it was clearly responded to. No, obviously they just started cutting the number of episodes to something reasonable.
Yep.
And maybe concentrating a little more of the budget on those individual episodes. That took a little while though, I think. But yeah, no, Seeds of Death, it's a weird one. It's a weird one in the Doctor Who history, right? Because it's like I say, there's all this stuff that we've been talking about that it no question there's a lot of criticism, but I'm not sure like if it's bad. Like it's kind of, it's so bad it's good. And there's all this just fever dream type stuff. You're sort of being held by the hand, both in the story and in sort of the visuals. It's sort of, there's a weird thing. There's a lot to like in this, even though there's a lot to criticize. I'm not quite sure where I'm coming to on that.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
It's definitely we criticize because we love to a certain extent. Like there is potential here. Like it's got heart. It's got some funny lines. It's got Jamie gets some great lines, which is say keeps pointing out that it's like, when Joey is always like, oh, our rocket is on course for the sun. It's going to hit the sun in 10 days. Jamie is like, well, that's all right. She's like, why? She's like, you've forgotten we've only got food for 3. There are a lot of lines like that. Like, I think Slar at one point thinks that he's killed the Doctor, and the Doctor says, well, evidently you weren't that successful, or something like that. A lot of just lovely Troughtony dialogue in here.
Before we bring it around and maybe figure out what we think of this with our questions, I want to say one more thing about the bit you just said, which is in the episode 6. I mean, I want to talk about episode 6 because what this does is kind of expose, in a sense, the 60s. Well, no, I don't even know if it's 60s, but I just want to zero in on what the Doctor's behavior is toward the Ice Warriors here, which is to say he goes full war mode. And he essentially weaponizes the solar collectors or whatever they are, solar reflectors. I'm not sure what they're, but anyway, those little discs. And he goes out and hunts the Ice Warrior on Earth and kills it. And then he goes back to the base, kills the first warrior he sees, rigs with the system so that the entire fleet, the entire Martian fleet is destroyed, not just off course, not just prevented. They're actually explicitly said they're taken into an orbit around the sun that's going to kill them all. And then, the last two, like Slar and his last warrior, you could sort of chalk that up to self-defense to a certain extent. But again, he goes up and just kills all the Ice Warriors, which is okay. I get, again, they're being portrayed in this episode, and we should probably pick apart the Ice Warriors themselves a little bit here, beyond just their incompetence of their plan and stuff. Like, they're being portrayed as one of these one-note monsters, like the Daleks or the Cybermen.
Yep.
Whereas every subsequent appearance after this, honestly, shows them not to be. That they are, they have more nuance to them. That they are sort of like this noble race, even though there's none of that nobility on display here. And beyond that, though, what I really want to talk about was the Doctor, where he gets, and even prior to this, I would argue, has been shown to have a more nuanced view of violence and war, and really struggles with the things he often has to do to repel alien invasions, right?
Yeah.
And here he doesn't struggle at all.
He usually gives the aliens a chance. He usually lets them say their piece. Wants to know their perspective. Yeah, here he treats them as subhuman, as it were. Which is just that these he's killing them off like they're flies. There's no thought given to it whatsoever, and it is an interesting contrast with the Ambassadors of Death from the next season, where there will be a lot more effort from the Doctor in his third incarnation, when encountering species apparently coming from Mars. To get their side of it and to try and hear them out and to get the Earth people to not blow them up. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Here, the Doctor is trigger happy. And it's kind of because it's Troughton that you barely even realize that's what he's doing.
Right.
He's the cosmic hobo. He's so gleeful. He's running around with these big lights, and you don't realize he's almost committing genocide here, like just dooming an entire fleet to the fires of Bernie death.
Yeah, this is why I kind of like I was saying earlier, like everything here is almost like super simplified in a story sense, and not quite larger than life, but it's almost like iconography for Doctor Who. If there was a Doctor Who stage play at the time, this would be a good contender for being the script for it, right? Because it's you're not really asked to consider nuance, to go into these sort of better sort of cerebral intellectual places, and it's just like, let's have some goofy fun with some monsters, have some future stuff, and have the Doctor and everyone solve things ostensibly with their brain, but also have some fun with some sort of action and shooting up the monsters at the end as well, right? But again, like with Terrence Dix, I guess he was fairly new to the show at the time. I would come to probably expect more from him later, but it is like I say, he seems to get what's going on here with his sort of earlier stuff and playing up some of the campy and funny bits. And then in episode 4, it's just like, the Doctor just kills them all. It's like, okay.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting echo of what. In the concert that I again recommend that you listen to on BBC Sounds, there is. Moffat says this interesting thing where he realized that whatever he wrote for Matt Smith, it could be the most audacious, treacherous, kind of nasty, mean, evil Doctor thing, and people would still go, it's Matt Smith. And for Capaldi, he could write the biggest, sort of jokiest, kind of campiest, most hilarious Doctor, and he would look terrifying saying it. Terrifying doing the campy dialogue, right? Because that's just Capaldi. So I feel like there's definitely
They speak volumes.
Definitely an echo of that here with Troughton can just get away with anything. He's so cute. Speaking of cute, I do want to give another shout out to Wendy Padbury because poor thing, she loved her costume in this. She bought it ahead of time because that was the
you weren't the only one, Chris.
Yes, I see. She liked how she looked in this as well. But she bought it. BBC regulations said, "Oh, well, you had to buy your costume." Bought it before they started filming. Then she does that scene in the ventilation. She's crawling in this costume on her hands and knees. There was wet paint in that ventilation shaft all over the new costume that she just bought. Poor Wendy. And yet, yes,
they didn't. Well, surely they had to get a new pair of pants just to finish the shoot, right? Like,
it's black and white.
I
guess it doesn't. Nobody can. Maybe they washed it off overnight. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Poor Wendy. Wendy Padbury, if you're listening, please send us your dry cleaner bill from the time.
Send it to Russell T. Davies, man. He'll fit for it. He'll take you out.
That's right. He's got some cash. But also, did you notice the Doctor, and this was actually an ad-lib by Troughton, when he comes out of his haze, says Victoria's name.
Oh,
not
yes.
Zoe's.
Okay, yeah, I remember that.
In the script, it was Zoe, but it kind of works because he's still a little kind of woozy, right? So, you're meant to think, he's just one companion behind. But also, isn't it interesting, given Pyramids of Mars, where the Doctor again references Victoria? I think this other time, like, Victoria is apparently a companion who sticks in his head a bit more than most.
Yeah. I mean, she's kind of unusual, and I had a conversation, I think I mentioned this before, with some of our fans on YouTube about it, and she's kind of a reluctant companion, and she's this, there's a lot of reluctant companions, I guess, than in the early years, but I do think there might be a level of, like, Troughton feels just kind of extra bad for her because her father dies, and she's kind of almost forced into this life of constant peril by being with the Doctor and Jamie. And she sort of eventually finds her way to sort of staying, as we saw in Fury of the Deep, and finding some place for herself. But I think the Doctor has just a certain amount of regret of like what happened to her and what he sort of ended up needing. Well, not needing, but like the life he ended up giving her, which was not really aligned with the kind of person she was.
I love the idea that this might still pop up for the Doctor in his future regenerations, and maybe we'll see Shooty in his regeneration haze, maybe throwing out a reference to Victoria.
Ooh, love it.
What better way to establish continuity? This is the same person.
Well, can't wait to see that question answered, but there are some other questions we need to answer, which are, of course, the 4 questions to Doomsday. First question, why did the randomizer take us here?
Well, it's a little scary, isn't it? I mean, how many times have we been scared by the randomizer in its first 100 picks? But I mean, from of death to of death. I mean, we referenced the seeds of death when we were talking about the ambassadors of death, because we were talking about, no, this is not the first time the Doctor has been an astronaut. The randomizer's like, what's that you say? You want the Doctor as an astronaut? Well, sure. Let's take this just a little diversion to the Mythmakers first. But then there it is, and it is interesting because what we're doing here, Pete, we're doing more than just your average Doctor Who podcast. We're doing more than just talking about the whole history of the show. This is an investigation into randomness itself. Is it truly random, or are we in some sort of extremis-like situation where we're actually in a simulation in a holographic universe? And I've got to say, after 100 randomizer picks, or getting close to it, the case for holographic universe is strong with this one.
I'm with you. Yeah, there's a lot of linking of deaths of Mars that is happening with all the things. I'm choosing to believe this is kind of the randomizer warning us about the current environment where we're starting to rely more and more on AI. And that's showing us a complacent Earth with kind of an AI there, and being all like, okay, this is this is probably a more likely future than it looks, minus the TMAT. But a complacent Earth in the 21st century, made all kind of vulnerable with a single point of failure because of their reliance on technology. Feel like that kind of hits home a little bit.
It really does. Yeah, we the TMAT should certainly have been better distributed, and it's weird that it wasn't. It's weird that such a backup could occur because everything has to be routed via the moon or something. It's a little confusing, but yeah, I'm glad I saw this. It's definitely very relevant to our current reality where NASA really isn't sending up rockets to the moon and keeps delaying the time that it's going to the moon. Supposedly we're going next year. I don't think we're going to hit that deadline. But yeah,
man mission? No way.
Yeah, no, not going to happen. But supposedly that's the Orion schedule. But meanwhile, India and China are landing there. They're not waiting for the TMAT to be set up. So it's the randomizer's pretty interested in the moon. We knew that when it tried to kill the moon. So maybe we're going to see a little more moon base action coming up.
I wonder how far we are from moon bingo.
Oh boy.
Well, hold that question and let's move on to the second question, which is, of course, what if the evil plot had succeeded?
Okay, so the evil plot is the Ice Warriors, I presume.
Which makes me think, how could this succeed? I mean, they're just so bad and incompetent. But I think for the sake of the question, we have to sort of engage in thought exercise. And if you consider Earth is so centralized, they are so dependent on these single points of failure, you can kind of see a way they could execute their plan that it works.
Well, once again, you sort of have to imagine that the Doctor's taken out of the equation, right? It's the turn left principle. And the obvious point to take him out, I think, is in the foam outside the weather center, which he seems to be stuck in for an awful long time. That foam
he seems to have a lot of faith that Zoe and Jamie are there, can hear him, and can open the door. Like he's just banging on the door, and it's like, why wouldn't you run away? Where I guess you could just say he was just overwhelmed by the foam, and so he had no choice. But I don't know. The Doctor seems to always have a choice.
Now, does he regenerate if he's taken over by asphyxiating foam? That's an open question. But you can argue that it keeps him delayed long enough that he isn't able to switch the signal. We do actually get a Ice Warrior fleet being guided into Earth. They just sort of take over the Northern Hemisphere. Literally everyone in the Southern Hemisphere starves. I guess that's it.
Earth becomes new Mars.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a few humans left as resistance, but that's it.
Well, the Ice Warriors can wait until it's winter in the Southern Hemisphere to go vacation there. They all get vacation homes. They turn the AC way down. So Ice Warriors, new masters of Earth. Congratulations.
Yep. And so what happened? Humanity's wiped out. So this sort of, again, I think there's another level to talk about the Ice Warriors. We talk about them being one-note aliens, and to reconcile that with the rest of New Who, and basically other places we've seen the Ice Warriors. I think you kind of have to assume the Ice Warriors we see here aren't representative of the government. They might be, and if they are, it's a period in Ice Warriors history where the government was taken over by essentially a terrorist group. And these folks are, not respectful of other sentient beings. They just feel like slaughtering everyone. And, for whatever they perceive the glory of the Ice Warrior Empire to be. So what we have here, then, if they do succeed, I think over time, you have to reconcile it. Like, okay, maybe they end up being not necessarily a nefarious conquering race like the Daleks and the Cybermen, but they do end up being more colonizers like a human empire. So instead of seeing a human empire like we see in Frontier in Space, that ends up being an Ice Warrior empire. But as they grow bigger, they become essentially less evil and fascist and whatever, and they might even come to regret or have some perspective on what they did to Earth later, but they still become more of a galactic power that isn't necessarily evil, but they instead of a Earth-centric future, which we constantly see, it's an Ice Warrior-centric future.
And you know what? That I can see them sort of going for the big galactic prize here, because as they start to interact with other races, I think the other species in the galaxy are just going to be so uncomfortable. Anytime you have to do diplomacy of the Ice Warriors, they're sitting around the table, they're all heavy breathing at you. And finally, I think
you've got to have a huge parka.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think even the Daleks would be around the table going, stop with the breathing, explain the heavy breathing, stop it, what do you want, take Scaro, take it. And even the Time Lord's like, oh, geez, guy, just chill with the breathing. Okay, look, we'll not interfere. So yes, Ice Warrior Galaxy. But I will say, on the positive side, no global warming.
Yeah.
Because the Ice Warriors would shut down that carbon dioxide generation thing pretty fast.
Well, you would have, but a lot less oxygen in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
So would that mean?
Well, swings and roundabouts.
Nitrogen. I don't know. Yeah. Well, there's plus sides to every invasion, I guess. Moving on.
It just means that ultra marathoners are like the only people who could survive because they get by on very little oxygen. Anyway,
people are so self-involved. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry to ultra marathoners in the audience. Let's move on to the third question, which is, where is the Clara Splinter? Clara Oswald. Oh, you take over.
Clara Oswald has been splintered in time. At the end of The Name of the Doctor, she stepped into the Doctor's timeline. She's somewhere in the background of every single Doctor Who story. And where is she in this one? I got to say, I think, I mean, it's just a small thing, but I think she's on the moon base. Or I think she was on the moon base. I think she team-matted out there a long time ago before this invasion. But she's the one who just kind of has all of these convenient things on the moon base. And one of them is that I believe that she set the temperature control to Fahrenheit, even though she marked it centigrade. So when it goes up to 60 Fahrenheit, that actually makes more sense.
Genius.
Genius.
I love that one. By the way, I think there's some seed pods here and where I'm.
Whoa, yeah, you okay there?
Not doing that well. Okay, so that's a good one. Here's what I thought, is that she's actually Secretary General of the UN. Because this completely explains, like, at some point, she essentially goes, okay, we're deferring everything to TMAD headquarters and the people there because they have this mysterious doctor who is helping them, and I'm confident they're going to sort it out. And that's why we basically don't ever see any government people or any sort of big operation to deal with the crisis and the Ice Warrior. Which, by the way, like, as soon as you see that it's bulletproof, why did it take them until episode 6 to get some flamethrowers or anything, really? Like, how about some grenades? Like, do you have anything better than a 22 rifle to shoot at this thing?
I'm fascinated by the security, like the police force from the future, who have these giant helmets for some reason. They look like cops. They're all riot cops, but like it looks like they've got breathing apparatus as well. So I guess they're dealing with the lack of oxygen, but they had these uniforms already. So what is even going on? Anyway, I like that idea. She's in the Secretary General's office. Panicked reports coming in from all over. She's shut off the Alexa with the weird voice already. Everyone's like, what are we going to do? And she's like, guys, to coin a nice warrior phrase, chill.
Perfect.
Yes.
All right, folks, it's time for the final question, the ultimate question, the only question that matters for the Seeds of Death. What did we think of this story?
The pull-to-open rating system has 6. I'm just giving you some relief here. It had 7 ratings. It has The Viscount Banger for the best of the best. The Dalek for just a very good episode. Yeah, that's right. I'm taking it out of order. It's a timey-wimey podcast. The Ogron for a bad episode of Doctor Who. The Professor Hater for a bad episode, but at least we learned something. The Lady Cassandra for if it's kind of a pretty looking, fabulous looking story, but paper thin plot. Or the rarely used fixed point in time, which is for reasons of nostalgia, you cannot rate this episode or any other reason that you feel fit. It's only been used twice in Pull to Open history so far, both by me on Destiny of the Daleks and on Marco Polo for slightly different reasons. So, Pete, what is your final rating?
So, like I say, I kind of struggled with rating this one because it's not. I can't say it's a bad episode of Doctor Who. It's sort of, almost iconic in a way for what Doctor Who is. I remember really liking this episode when I was a kid. I actually liked the sort of slow reveal of the Ice Warriors because I sort of vaguely knew about them from Pertwee. Oh no, I had seen them in Pertwee, and when they were revealed, it was like, oh, that's cool. That sort of makes it really memorable. But my God, there's just so much insanity and goofiness. And it's not a great episode of Doctor Who. So it's a big conundrum. And plus it's like this 21st century vision of TMAT and stuff. Like we said, it doesn't really fit even in its own chronology. Like I'm going for it, man. Finally, you've done it, Seeds of Death. You are my very first fixed point in time
Whoa!
Doctor Who. I can't rate this. It's just too crazy.
How about that? You rated 99 stories, but the Seeds of Death wasn't one. You've given it your very first fixed point in time, Pull to Open's third ever fixed point in time rating. And I'm not going to do that. But I am going to say that I agree with you. This is a tough one to rate. I spent about the whole week kind of balanced on a knife edge between Dalek and Ogron as I was watching this. It's an Ogron. It's Dalek. It's an Ogron. You know what? I'm going to give it a hybrid rating because, again, I recommend the colorized version rather than paying a subscription to BritBox. Just go find the colorized version on the Internet Archives. BritBox, come to us. We want some sponsorship money. Let's talk about this. But for the colorized version, I think is fabulous enough to earn a Lady Cassandra.
Okay.
But it's a hybrid, and I have not decided until this very moment what kind of hybrid it is. And I think I'm going to take Mark Ockrum's lead and just say that we should give things a bit of a Dalek rating if they amused us, if we just sort of had a whale of a time watching it for whatever reason. So yeah, it's a bit padded, it's weird, it doesn't make sense, it's sort of, fabulous and pride-filled, as you mentioned. So that gives it the Cassandra rating, but also it's a bit of a Dalek. It's a Cassandra Dalek hybrid.
Wow, look at that.
Yes, we've reached into the Dalek casing, we've taken the mutant inside, we've stretched it out until it's flat, we've moisturized it a lot, and it's just looking fabulous. And that is the Seeds of Death, everyone.
All right, that's it for us on the Seeds of Death, but not for you, listeners. Guys, if you are listening on Spotify, go ahead and vote now on what you thought of the Seeds of Death and what rating it should have. And we will, of course, report those ratings in a future episode of Pull to Open.
And
right,
now we have to
think about that one, actually.
Yeah, yeah. Did you, folks? Did you watch Seeds of Death? It was one of the earliest VHS releases, so I know that there are a lot of classic fans out there who kind of got into it, perhaps a little bit more than they should have done. I do have to wonder if Stephen Moffat was one of those, and that's why Osgood kind of cropped up again as a name.
Oh, that's right.
In Moffat's era, right? But anyway, it's tell us what you think about that, and we will we will listen, or we will appear to be listening, but we will duck out to our TARDIS halfway through the conversation, through the rain that is raining a little too hard right now, and we will step back into our TARDIS, activate our randomizer, which is powered by two things. Pete has the Codex, the complete list of Doctor Who stories in sequential order. I have random.org, aka the executor component of the randomizer, which uses atmospheric noise, seed pods in the atmosphere, fungus in the atmosphere, amount of oxygen in the atmosphere, ice warriors in the atmosphere. Goodness, there's so many Seeds of Death references that we can include in what random.org measures. But one thing it doesn't do is use computer-based algorithmic randomness, because that's just pseudo-random. It's rubbish. You need atmospheric noise. That's what they provide. And Pete, you have the number of how many stories, after having completed 100, how many stories have we left to visit?
We have, hold on, I haven't had a chance to get rid of Seeds of Death.
It is 202. 202. That's right. We've reached the New Jersey area code or Washington, D.C. area code. I can't remember.
I think it's D.C.
D.C., right. Yes. So the minimum is 1, the maximum is 202, and we'd like to issue challenges to the randomizer. And I don't want to be, really base and say that I just want the randomizer to take us to New Who because I'm mad at BritBox and maybe it's coming on Disney Plus soon for Classic Who. I won't say that. What I'll say instead is I'm going to risk it. You seem to be into the moon, randomizer. Take us to another moon-based episode or moon-based story.
Does it have to be a moon of Earth?
No, it does not.
Okay.
I know that the randomizer likes to be tricksy, so I'm going to leave that open.
So I'm going to go, look, we've done a lot of death lately, sort of in titles and certainly as part of stories. Give me, randomizer, what you think represents life.
Yes.
What is, I don't know, I don't think the word life or living is part of a title of Doctor Who, but give me something that aligns with that idea. And I'm kind of half hoping it takes us to the empty child and everybody lives or something like that. But that's a little too on the nose. There might be other things that are more representative or equally representative of celebrating life. So let's do that.
I've got to wonder, after going through our cold opens, whether by life the randomizer will read leaf and give us the Rings of Arcton and Clara Oswald's leaf that she blew into the world on. So that's another possibility.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate it.
But enough Seeds of Death. Let's have some Seeds of Life, man. Maybe let's have some groovy environmental poetry. Although I kind of feel like we've done all the big environmental ones. Let's see what we got left.
We'll see. Oh man, you're just throwing out the challenges now. All right, let's get to the countdown.
Yes.
Happening in 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, I'm going to give it in the style of an Ice Warrior. 36.
We're never gonna get out of Classic Who, but we have arrived at the day of the Daleks.
The day of the Daleks. Wow.
Pertwee again.
My goodness. Are there moons?
No. There's no moons in this one.
In the day of the Daleks, is there life? I'm sure the Daleks are very
really mine it for life. So, of all of that, certainly not really much of an environmental thing.
It's got a bit timey-wimey.
It's very timey-wimey.
Yeah, I think BritBox kind of spoiled that as well with one of its. I've complained about BritBox's. Little thumbnails that they provide for the episodes before. Yeah. I believe there's a spoiler in a thumbnail for this that has made me actually want to watch this serial. So,
have you seen this one?
I have not.
Oh, okay. This is interesting. Yeah, this is on many lists of things. That's all I'll say.
And yes, there's the 20 episodes. It's on the complete list of Dalek stories. It features the 22nd century, which is interesting.
True. Yep.
Randomizer. You would take us from a fake 21st to a fake 22nd. So, wow. Well, okay, there we go.
We'll see. We will see next week, folks, when we encounter the Daleks in Day of the Daleks. But for now, we are going to bid adieu from the 21st century. Guys, this has been Pull to Open. It's a podcast and a Substack and a newsletter and a social media phenomenon. Well, that's probably saying a bit too much, but we're in a lot of places. Go check us out at pulltoopen.net. Follow us on YouTube, youtube.com/pull-to-open. Follow us on Twitter, pull-to-open63. We're also at that handle on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads. We're at pull-to-open on TikTok and Blue Sky. But go ahead. Follow us all there in a few places, one place. Drop us a line and let us know what you think of the whole enterprise that we call Pull-to-Open.
And late breaking news on Day of the Daleks. Once we watch Day of the Daleks, Pete, we will have a bingo on the TARDIS console being used outside the TARDIS itself, as we saw in the Ambassadors of Death and Inferno. That's it. Marking your bingo cards, folks.
We'll polish them up. Get them ready for the next one.
For the next one, yes, but we will not necessarily go there directly because, as we've mentioned throughout, this was the 100th story that we've covered on Pull to Open. So what do you do as a Doctor Who fan when you've got 100 stories of something that you've watched? You rank them. Not just the Viscount Banger, the Dalek, the Ogron, Professor Hater, and the whole gang. We're going to literally rank, Doctor Who magazine style, all of the stories that we've done so far. Our first Hot 100. Pete, you excited?
I'm so excited. Guys, this is going to be the list. To end all lists? No, to begin all lists. It's a list.
Because it's a list that we will construct as we go along. We can slot future stories into it. But yeah, you've never seen a list containing 100 random Doctor Who stories ranked before. This is definitely something new in the world. So join us next week on Pull to Open.
Time to reflect, everyone.
Very
See you then.